Welcome to the StarCommand Podcast NFL edition. This is David here with Alan, bringing you all the news and happenings around the league. If you could hit the like and subscribe button, share it with a friend, leave us a comment, say hi, let us know what you think. We'd really appreciate it. All right. So, Alan, we were talking earlier this week. There's just not a great slate of games this week in the NFL. It looked like it was going to be a great slate of games, 1 versus 2. Now Jaden Daniels is hurt. You had Dallas and San Francisco. Dallas is banged up. San Francisco's super banged up. All of these matchups that look like they could be pretty good turned out to not be the matchups we thought that they were going to be. So we thought it would be worth talking about probably just the two best teams in the league right now, in the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. And I know everybody talks about the Kansas City Chiefs, and yes, they keep on winning. We kept saying over and over in our little pre-show meeting, Baltimore just makes it look better. They had the two early losses, the confounding loss to Las Vegas, and then the half of your big toe is out of bounds.
The toe on the line. Yeah,
Yeah,
just the Isaiah Likely toe, and then they were going to go for two. What a difference that would have made, that in the season.
right. And then Detroit, like the unsung heroes of the NFL, right? Formerly the 0-16 Detroit Lions, couldn't fill a stadium, bags on their heads, fans. Go to the NFC Championship game, and all you could hear any of the talking heads talk about is, well, I got to see them do it again. Well, they went to one NFC Championship game 30 years ago and lost that, and they haven't been back since. So let's see them do it again. And, they had the one hiccup against Arizona this year. And we all know, I mean, looking at the New England Patriots a few years ago, it is almost impossible to go completely undefeated in the NFL, so much so that only one team has ever done it, the 72 Dolphins. So having a blip here and there is not a big deal. But the way they dominated Minnesota for pretty much the majority of the game, starting out down 10-0 and then coming back to be in the lead by 11 points two different times before kicking a walk-off field goal the week after they lose the heartbeat of their team, essentially, right? The leader, the guy that is all things Detroit, right? Grew up right down the street in Pontiac, Michigan, went to the university. I mean, homegrown talent playing in your city, who's the heartbeat of your team, goes down with a serious injury, and you just come out and completely dominate, the team that was leading your division up until that point.
Yeah. Detroit, these teams have a lot of similarities, Detroit and Baltimore. You'd say the best running back duo in the league. I think everyone would agree it's Gibbs and Montgomery. But if you
Almost
think
definitely.
hard, but if you think about it, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. What a running combo. Lamar's not a running back,
No,
but man, I take those two guys in the backfield, right?
right.
So I
Most
can't think
definitely.
of another pair of runners put together that can outdo Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry right now. So there's
Right.
1A and 1B rushing. Um, Detroit's only loss was to Tampa. That was a good game. Tampa has proven they're a legit team. They would be in the playoffs if it weren't for the injuries that they've recently suffered.
Right.
Um, they're Detroit's got the tougher division, obviously, because for
By
some
far.
reason the NFC North has decided to become juggernauts, and Green Bay, Green Bay's got their quarterback. They're rolling. The Bears have their quarterback. They're legit. Great
Right.
roster. And then Minnesota out of nowhere, boom, here we are with Sam
The
Darnold.
resurgence of Sam Darnold. Yes.
So uh, great division. It's going to be tougher for them. Baltimore's dealing with Pittsburgh team that is surprising to say the least. I don't see
Right.
this happening. I see them being the Mike Tomlin 1 game over 500, whereas Baltimore is up there around 12, 13 wins. So I see them winning that division easily. Hell, I still think Cincinnati comes back and gets second in that division.
Most
Um,
definitely.
but yeah, a lot of similarity. Detroit's back end of their defense isn't as good as Baltimore's. Baltimore's a little better defense. But weapons wise, Detroit has can out weapon. They've got, St. Brown, Laporta, and Williams. Jameson Williams, he's serving a 2 game suspension, but when he's coming into his own as a receiver. So
Most
they're
definitely.
loaded. Yeah, they are loaded with weapons everywhere. Jared Goff playing at all-time high. You'd mentioned earlier how many completions does he have over 4 games? What was that stat?
Uh, I don't
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly how many incompletions it was, but they have more touchdowns over the last 4 games than he does incompletions.
that's crazy.
Yeah,
That's wild. Four games, that's nuts.
yeah, yeah. 4 game span, they have more touchdowns than he has incompletions, and Ben Johnson's dialing up the play calling like crazy. And really, you talked about Detroit's secondary, and I feel like they might actually be starting to come into their own somehow. I mean, they just held Justin Jefferson to under 80 yards receiving, um, which is a feat in its own. And Baltimore's got a little banged up in their secondary. We'll see how long Marlon Humphreys, who's by far their best corner, how long he's out with that knee injury. Um, that could become problematic for him going forward. But I really do feel like that these are just the two best teams, and we're hearing a lot about Baltimore. And there's the old adage, I got to see you do it in the playoffs, right? We've seen Lamar win 12 or 13 games in a season before and be a number one seed and not be able to get over the hump in the playoffs. Whereas the first time the Lions made it to the playoffs, they got over the hump. I mean, they didn't make it all the way to the Super Bowl, but I mean, heck, if there is no halftime in that San Francisco 49ers game, they probably do, right? Somewhere in that they cooled off and somehow San Francisco heated up when they went to the locker room and it was a different game in the second half. And really, I think Dan Campbell probably learned some lessons in coaching that game, and Ben Johnson probably learned some lessons in play calling for the offensive side of the ball in that game. And so I very well expect Detroit to be right back in that position. I do agree with you. It's going to be a tougher road for them going through the NFC North. Uh, but the way they played against Minnesota, it looks like they're not even flinching. So they definitely are not scared of anything right now or anybody. So speaking of teams on the run, right? We're looking at Baltimore and Detroit. What are some teams that you think really need to make a move to either push themselves to get into playoff position because they're not there yet, or teams that might be in playoff position and need a missing piece to kind of get over the hump?
So starting with Detroit Lions, I think they're in their Super Bowl window. They have the pieces everywhere. Losing Aiden Hutchinson is it's going to hurt them against
Correct.
the better teams and in the playoffs. I go get me a pass rusher. You got Cleveland, who's wholesaling players. I'd say what I can get Myles Garrett for a year. What would it take to reach out to the Dallas Cowboys? Well, the crazy trade offer would be, hey, I'll pitch David Montgomery to you guys for Micah Parsons, or and again, I'm saying that as a Cowboys fan. I love Micah Parsons, but I think that it's not a Cowboys window of Super Bowl. It is the Detroit Lions.
Right.
You need to make sure that defensive line gets the whole, you plug in another stud to anchor that defense to push this team over the edge. And I think you go make a splash, and see what you can do. With the Cowboys needing a running back, that's the other team. I mean, we try everything you could do for these players. Reach out to the Jacksonville Jaguars and say, hey, what do you want for ETN?
Yeah.
Right? You look like you've got his replacement. He's struggling. He's not happy. What do you want? Reaching out to Cleveland for Nick Chubb. Hey, what would it take to get Nick Chubb out of there? And then for the splash deal, like I just mentioned with Detroit, give up one of your stars defensive players that we have that are going to cost you a fortune. DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, whatever it takes to get you a good, solid running back in there and try to resurrect your season. So those two things. There's running backs out there on teams that are losing their position.
Right.
That Cleveland's just wholesaling players away. So it's if I was Detroit and Dallas, I'd be making some moves.
Yeah. I've got I've got the Lions on mine as well, but I have them as needing a defensive back. Whatever their defensive coordinator, and for whatever reason, his name's escaping me at the moment. Um, but whatever their defensive coordinator did to plan up around losing Aiden Hutchinson seemed to work. They were able to get massive pressure on Sam Darnold all day long, and that's a really good offensive line that they have in Minnesota. So while I agree with you that they probably do need a pass rusher, even before Aiden went down, we had had conversations before about how they really need to shore up that secondary. They've got a lot of young guys in there, Brian Branch and Terry and Arnold. I think they need to go get a veteran guy. And I think if the Jets manage to lose this game against the Patriots this weekend, which is not unheard of, right? It's a division game, but they start falling further and further out of this playoff window. And eventually the Jets are going to have to start wholesaling players too. I mean, they're talking about wanting to keep Devontae Adams long term. We don't know if Aaron Rodgers is coming back. And DJ Reed, the cornerback that plays opposite of Sauce Gardner, would be an interesting pickup for the Detroit Lions. He's a stud at corner. He's in the final year of his contract, so you can determine whether you want to or have the money to pay him at the end of the year. But he's probably going to leave New York regardless, unless they franchise tag him, because who wants to stay playing for a hopeless franchise? So you can either piss the player off and bet on him holding out if you franchise him, or you can just lose him for nothing, or you can get, a third or a second round pick from the Detroit Lions for him. And that kind of really helps to shore up their pass defense. And then the other team I put on there was my Washington Commanders, right? We either need a pass rusher or a defensive back desperately. We've got some decent pieces at defensive end, Dante Fowler, Armstrong. We had a couple of guys come over from Dan Quinn's defense in Dallas to kind of shore up that area. We just released Jamin Davis, who we tried to convert to defensive end. But we either need a good pass rusher to help out our corners, or we need a good corner to help out our pass rushers. The Emmanuel Forbes project is over and done with, in my opinion. They're just waiting until the end of the season for depth reasons to cut him. Sandersville looks like he could be a stud in the slot, but we need a good lockdown corner on one end or the other. We're sitting in first place in the division. We have the Eagles coming up pretty quickly, and they've got a slew of wide receivers. So we need somebody to lock them down if we really want to keep this trajectory going.
I like it. I like it. Maybe they will make that move. I mean, why not? You be aggressive. It's about taking advantage when you have the pieces right and you see that magical year. What can we do? The GMs and the owners have to say, "Oh, we've got something here. Let's add to this and keep this momentum rolling."
Right. And
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 the other
and
part of
don't
that is while you have a rookie quarterback under a rookie contract for Washington,
you can
right?
spend some money. Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned Cleveland wholesaling players. Cleveland's got two good corners. Greg Newsome, the second or third or whatever. I don't remember. I know he's got an acronym or a suffix at the end of his name, but I can't remember what it is. But you've got Greg Newsome, and then you've got that Ward kid that came out of Denzel Ward or whatever his name is.
Denzel Ward, yeah, at Ohio State, yeah.
Yeah, so I know both of those guys are getting close to being ready to be free agents. You're not going to re-sign them both. You're not going to have the cap space with the Deshaun Watson contract. You're pretty much getting rid of all of your good players because you don't want to make them suffer through any more Deshaun Watson stuff. You feel bad for them. So let us scoop one of those guys up or both of them. Heck, maybe we can work out some crazy trade and get Myles Garrett and Newsome or Myles Garrett and Ward for some kind of weird compensation and shore up both those positions and make
Yeah,
a playoff push.
you start throwing second round, third round picks at people, and
Yeah,
you see players go for good players go for fourth and fifth rounders these days. It blows my mind. Pro
yeah.
Bowl player will go for a fourth round pick
Well,
next year, and I'm like, what?
I mean, it just happened, right? Amari Cooper's been in the Pro Bowl almost every year he's been in the league, and He
Yes.
Buffalo got him for a fourth round pick. DeAndre Hopkins has
It's
gotten for a
crazy.
fifth round pick. And now, granted, D Hop's not what he's been. He's more of a possession receiver, but he instantly helps out Kansas City. And I mean, if you know the team's desperate, you're able to drive the price up, and these guys are letting them go for nothing. So I just, because at the end of the day, I think it becomes, do we get something or do we really get nothing when this guy leaves at the end of the year?
Absolutely.
And those are the things that we're running into, and so I like that. And a lot of these, I put I put the Chargers and Tampa both on here for receivers because they're both dealing with serious receiver injuries. I was watching that Chargers game the other day and couldn't nobody on their team catch, and then when they did catch the ball, they couldn't hold on to it. So both those teams need receivers. Obviously, the injuries with
I
Tampa.
thought about Tampa too, and I may be just being biased because I talked about us Dallas going out and getting a running back, right, to get us over the hump. So I'm thinking here I am as a fanatic, thinking that we're a player away from getting in the playoffs. I don't
Yeah,
think if the Bucks go get a receiver, whatever that's going to cost them, I don't think it gets them to the playoffs. Uh,
probably not.
um, I mean, it just I guess it depends on how long Mike Evans is out, right? If
Yeah,
Mike Evans is back and is if he just misses 4 weeks and he's back in 5 weeks, that'd be he comes back week 13, 14.
they might be able
Um,
to make a
then,
last second push.
then then maybe you're finding somebody to fill in for Chris Godwin and who's the leader in your team in receptions. So maybe, but I did think about that too, and I just that's where my thinking was, and not putting them on the hunt for
Yeah,
a big piece because I just feel like they've got too far to go now.
and so we're going to kind of flip the script on the whole injuries and illness thing, right? And get into some fantasy because we talked about that we had our game against each other in fantasy football this past week. You told me you quit paying
I forget
attention.
how that turned out. I can't remember.
Well, we're getting there. You said you'd quit paying attention after Thursday when your receiver got 0 points, and
Yeah,
my
played the whole
defense.
game. He actually played. Didn't leave the game with pneumonia. Didn't get injured. He actually
Right,
played the whole game.
and my
Cortland
defense
Sutton,
got
that's talking
25
about you.
points. Yeah, and so I really was coasting to a victory, right? I mean, Monday night I was still up by 37 points or something crazy like that, 31 points. And it would have been a lot more, except for I have a player leave in the middle of the game with pneumonia. And I've got another player playing with the third string quarterback. They can't figure out how to pass him the ball. He had like 2 or 3 touchdown passes that game, and they were all to Jonnu Smith, the tight end, who I forgot was even still in the league until I heard that catching touchdown passes. And so I don't know, man. It was just a frustrating, especially the Debo thing, right? Like I've been dealing with the Tyreek Hill thing for 4 or 5 weeks now. Thankfully, two is coming back this week. Um, that should help me out big time. Debo's already been released from the hospital. I don't know what that means for his playing this week, but kind of just that frustration of a fantasy owner when your lineup gets locked and all of a sudden, 3 plays in, the player you need to score it, I might not have even needed him to score a whole bunch of points. 5, 7 points would have helped me out. You know, in that game, I made a couple of errors in my lineup. Like I took Zach Ertz out of the starting lineup and put Sam Laporta in. Zach Ertz probably had his best fantasy day of the season, scoring 11 or 12 points. Probably would have put me over the top right there, and it just
Yeah, and
that
but
whole
you played Laporta in what you figured would be an up and down the field game, which it was, a 31
right,
to 29. There was, you know, um, 60 points scored in that game between Green Bay, or excuse me, between Minnesota and Detroit.
yeah,
But Laporta gets 2 points. So,
right,
you played the guy that you thought was going to have the more opportunities getting up and down the field, and it didn't work out. And between your 3 guys that you're counting on to get you around 30 points, Laporta, Tyreek, and Debo, you got 3,
right,
you know,
and
and it's tough to overcome.
it is. The only thing that really carried me and even Sam Darnold, right? Sam Darnold's been lighting up fantasy, and he gets 11 points in a shootout. Like, how does that,
Right.
how does that compute? And so I don't know. We were talking about the frustrations of fantasy owners and the reporting of this because you were even mentioning, sometimes it's not till a right before kickoff game, especially on a Monday night. And what do you do?
Yeah, if you've got a guy, you really got to pay attention if you got a guy that's questionable on a Sunday night or Monday night game because there was James Cook hit me one game. I think it had to be a Monday night game. Buffalo was playing someone, and all of a sudden it's literally he's out there warming up to play and he doesn't feel right? So they decide they're going to sit him out. Doesn't feel 100%. And they let you know at kickoff, James Cook's not playing. Literally, that's when the news came in. It was at kickoff. When their broadcast comes on, there was no nothing sent out on the apps. And at that point, do you have a handcuff running back for James Cook? Maybe you're lucky and you did. If you don't, there's nobody to add and drop at that time.
Right,
You could be crazy fantasy manager, drop some. Who have you not played at that point, right? So you're kind of
right,
screwed. Um, but yeah, the guys that are like Mike Evans in the Tampa game on Monday. We knew he was injured. He's questionable. He comes out, gets you a touchdown, and then the second drive, he's done.
yeah,
He ends up being done, and he's going on IR with a hamstring injury. But he gave you a touchdown, but that's the chance he's injured. You saw him limping last week, but he
right,
can get you touchdowns. So it's like I got to ride with that. He's going to play it through, and you just roll the dice. Hell, Cortland Sutton for me played the entire game and still didn't get a point.
right,
So at least Debo got some snaps and then left the game. Laporta played the whole game and got you two. So it's tough
yeah.
sometimes, because I mean, think back to the rookie. I don't even know if he's a rookie, but Mason for the Niners when he got
Oh yeah,
that
yeah,
first
yeah,
start
yeah.
that week, and they interviewed him after the game, and they're like, "When did you know you were starting?" He's like, "Friday night." They told me, and everybody's like, "What? You knew Friday?" It's big time. This fantasy runs it. Everybody wants the information. They want it
Well,
immediately so everyone can set their lineups and drafts. And
well, and it's not even just fantasy, right? There's a lot of player props and stuff that go in. I remember a couple weeks ago, I put in some player prop bets, and Brian Robinson was on one of them. And then, like right before the game, we find out he's going to be out. I'm on the Hard Rock Bet app trying to figure out what do I do. Like, you won't give me an early cash out on this so that I can pick somebody else. Like, what's going to happen? Luckily, if they don't play at all, like if it's listed that they're not going to play, it just becomes a
they
push
treat
on
it
that.
push.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But so that's lucky.
But
But
at
if
the
they
same
take a
time,
snap, if they
right,
take a
there's the
snap,
catch.
and
If they
and
pull
so
a
now you're
Debo,
looking
right?
at like if you took Debo
Yeah.
Samuel anytime touchdown or over 60 yards receiving because Brandon Ayuk's out or whatever the case may be, and he goes out 3 plays in because he's got pneumonia. Now, look, no, I'm not telling you should play through pneumonia or anything like that. I'm just saying that from a fan's perspective, somebody that's, you know, obviously if you had to be hospitalized, you had no
Yeah,
business being on the field,
this
but
isn't a soapbox. This isn't a soapbox of getting on the players for not playing
no,
through injuries at all. This is
no,
about just getting the information as quick as possible to say, like the Mike Evans situation. Are you playing at 50%? Because
right,
you were. We all after your first touchdown, you were limping on the sideline. There's no way you were anywhere near 75%. That
no,
50% would be nice to know. But I get the competitive advantage. You cannot let the other team know you're 50% because
right.
they're okay. We're not gonna roll a safety over to you this game.
Yeah.
So
Well, and then
I get it, but
there's the other end of that, right? Because you just said I'm not going to roll a safety over there to you. Now everybody's only 50% or oh, I'm only 35%, but I'm going to give it a go, and try to play them that way. So I mean, I understand it all, but man, it can be so frustrating. I kept looking at I didn't even realize, until probably halfway through the third quarter that Debo just wasn't even playing anymore. Like I'm steadily looking at my app and I'm like, what's going on with Debo? I mean, even if he's having a bad game, he'll get you five. you
right.
know?
He's gonna he's gonna get you 25 yards rushing. He's gonna have you 5 catches. And then his thing is hitting the end zone. If Debo gets you in the end zone, that's when he gives you the big points because he's gonna calculate all the yards and the catches and to get you
Yeah.
up to about 10, but he starts throwing in a touchdown or two when you're in the, 20s. So yeah, back to our fantasy matchup. I had sent you the text on how my ticket, my last week's NFL ticket was doing,
Right.
and I was like, all right, man, just need the Ravens to win. Got Ravens' money line on this ticket. We're gonna win us $800. And then you responded with, yeah, but just need Lamar to stay under 40 points. And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? And I thought, oh crap, fantasy. I hadn't looked at it. I really hadn't. And I was super busy all day Sunday, and so I go and I look and I'm like, actually, my man, it's 31 points and let's go. That
Yeah,
brother went out there,
he
got
had that
36
about
points.
halfway through the third quarter.
Yeah, well, he did. So when I first took the lead from you in the into the third quarter or beginning of the fourth, whenever that was when I took the lead for you, I was like, yeah, I was up by one. And I'm just sitting, all right, don't fumble because I thought he might get pulled, and might not play the fourth quarter because they were up by 20 points.
Right.
And he comes out the next play, 2 plays later, and throws a swing pass that's behind the line of scrimmage, and it's a fumble. And immediately it's tied again. And I was like, oh my God, please don't. Luckily, Tampa went and scored. And so Lamar had to stay in for a few more series, and I was able to get another freaking touchdown. They just were
Yeah.
rolling. But yeah, that was pretty damn exciting right there.
It was. It was great because I really thought I was going to win literally off the backs of my running backs. I had Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, and Brian Robinson Jr. that, and then the Denver's defense. That's where all of my points came from. Sam Darnold got me like 11. Yeah, it was
And
wild.
you caught me at the right time. You couldn't have caught all braggers at the best time. You got CD Lamb on a bye. Nico Collins is on the IR, and just
Yeah, yeah. All your studs
mm.
were out, and somehow you still managed to pull it out because none of my studs could score any points. Brent Huntley throwing the ball, Debo with pneumonia.
Hey, I'm rooting. I could have Tyreek Hill. I've got him in another league, and you've got him obviously in this our league. And man, I'm happy to us coming back because I need those 20.2 Tyreek Hill games for
Yes,
sure if I'm
yeah. If
going
I
to do
could get
anything in
that
the
mixed in
playoffs.
with the because all three of my running backs have just been beast mode all season long. I mean, I've probably gotten 15 or more points from each one of my running backs at almost every game. So it's
Yeah, you're still in third place. You're still sitting third in the league at 4-3. And I'm sitting even with my win, I'm still sitting at the 8 seed. I don't think either one of us moved. I believe you were the 3 seed going
yeah,
into last week.
I
So
was.
they're kind
So
of, I think, which means that all the lower seeds beat the higher seeds. So
yeah, yeah, everybody just kind of stayed pat. So it'll be an interesting wrap to the end of the season. I'm hoping to maybe hit one of those high score weeks now that Tua's back. So it'll be interesting. It will be interesting for sure. So with that, man, again, if you guys would like or subscribe, share it with your friends, shoot us a comment, tell us some of your fantasy struggles. Who do you think needs to make a move before the deadline to get over the hump and into the playoffs or make that final playoff push? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and we will respond. So with that, the Star Command is out.